Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday, and it's time to keep rolling on through this rookie class of Seahawks, and we are now down to round number 6 with our second to last pick, Jerrick Reed the second. And this is an interesting one. This is one of those guys that somebody in our front office fell in love with watching him over these last few years. Somebody really pounded the table for him, and we ended up spending a sixth round pick on a guy who was not really present on any big boards in the top 250. Now, I think most teams do things like this from time to time. They narrow in on a player they really, really like, and they know that the player doesn't have, in a vacuum, the value to be drafted at all. Like Jerrick Reed, when I did find him on a big board, it was always around like 400 or something. So there was very little reason to believe anybody else was going to take him. The problem is, if you let a player get into UDFA and they can choose their landing spot, you just might not be able to get that player even though you make them an offer. It could even be a bigger offer than what another team is offering, but they decide they don't want to go to your place. They don't want to go to your team. They want to go to another team where they get a better opportunity. Or you lose the bidding war. Maybe a player like a Jerrick Reed would go to whichever team offered him the most money, and that might not be us. So this is kind of one of those picks, is how I would put it. You're aware of the fact that you are technically reaching, although once you get down to the sixth round, you're not really reaching that much. It's very, very, very thin. But it's the price that you pay to make sure you get that player. Because even though you're confident he'll be there in UDFA, that doesn't mean you're going to get him. And we didn't have a lot of money to play with in UDFA. I think we ended up giving out like $20,000 in bonus money. There were some teams that gave several times more than that to one UDFA. So that may have not worked out well for us if he had actually made it to that point. So we used a sixth round pick on him. And this one's going to be a little bit harder to go through than some of the other players. I'm going to do my best, though. Fortunately, he played a lot in college. He played a lot of football for the New Mexico Lobos. Mostly at safety, but he wore many hats on that defense. And special teams, too, actually. I should point that out. But we don't really have much in the way of official measurements or testing. He's going to be 23 years old when the season starts. 5'10", 196 pounds. He did test well at his pro day, but they're pro day numbers, so I'm not really going to be trusting them. That being said, I do think this guy is a surprisingly good athlete for what you're getting from a school like New Mexico. But we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. In this video, we're going to go over his career, starting back in 2019 for the Lobos. Played in 10 games, 663 snaps, 51 tackles, 3 for loss, an interception, 1 pass defensed, 8 missed tackles. Put a bookmark on that one. And 2 quarterback pressures on 10 pass rush snaps. So you can kind of see him doing all different kinds of things fairly well. And this was years ago, and he's already pretty much a permanent fixture of that New Mexico Lobos defense. A lot of snaps played against the run, but even more played in coverage. He's playing in the box, 190 snaps, slot corner, 312 snaps, free safety, 131 snaps. So he's basically playing a little more than 300 snaps as a safety and then about 300 snaps as a slot corner. Those are his main priorities, but he's very versatile in how they utilized him. And some of that was because, as near as I can tell anyway, watching some of the stuff that Jerrick Reed the second did at New Mexico, he was pretty consistently, even back in 2019, one of their best players, and they just wanted to put him in as many situations as possible. So his coverage metrics, solid, 50 targets, 34 receptions, 286 yards, 1 touchdown allowed, so overall a QB rating of 81 allowed. And his grades were decent. Nothing great, nothing spectacular. His run defense grade was a little underwater. But overall, a pretty decent player who's providing positive value to a pretty small-time school. 2020, he only played in 7 games. This was, of course, the COVID year, which people keep reminding me of in the comments because I've kind of memory hold that, I guess. But 413 snaps, 33 tackles, 1 for loss, 4 picks. So we can kind of see him kind of moving over to a slightly different role where he becomes more of a ball hawk, starts moving towards that role instead of getting involved in run defense quite as much, but still pretty involved overall in this defense. He reduced his missed tackles to 6, although on a per snap basis, it's basically the same rate. Plays plenty of snaps in run defense, more in coverage, had a couple pass rush snaps as well. Again, he plays in the box a good amount, plays free safety a good amount, plays in the slot a good amount. So we're really looking at a guy who is splitting his focus across many different roles and doing fairly well in all of them. His coverage numbers were way better this year, barely allowed a 50% completion rating, less than 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, so a QB rating of 55.6 because of the picks. And his grades went up overall pretty universally. Well, not in tackling, actually. His tackling grade went down significantly, but overall, he was a more impactful player and was taking steps in the right direction. 2021, 12 games, so basically the full season, almost 800 snaps, 88 tackles, and that matches up with what I see when I watch him. He is just involved in every play. He's not always making a great play, he's not always doing the right thing, but he's always involved. He's always around the ball. And he racked up a really high tackle count for a safety because of that. And I know he wasn't just playing safety, but regardless, 1 tackle for loss, 1 interception, 6 passes defensed, 10 missed tackles. So missed tackles continue to be a little bit of a problem. Part of that is because he's always sticking his nose in there trying to make a play. You're going to miss more tackles when you go for tackles that other players wouldn't necessarily go for. 404 run defense snaps, 377 coverage snaps, 10 pass rush snaps. So very varied collection of reps that he got to participate in. He is playing more safety stuff this year in comparison to previous ones. He had 271 box safety snaps, about 200 free safety snaps, and 280 slot snaps. So again, he's doing a lot of different things, and it's very notable and it's very impressive, but he is starting to play safety a little bit more, and I think it works fairly well for him. I still don't totally know what he's best at, but the fact that he's doing all these things so much is promising. Coverage metrics. This is the one year where his coverage numbers were kind of not so great. He gave up 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, 35 targets, 23 receptions, QB rating of almost 110. So his coverage metrics took a little bit of a hit, but his grades overall went up, according to PFF. He became a good player against the run, good player in coverage, really good tackler, and overall solid grades. So this was starting to become a safety of some note in college football, at least. And then 2022, the most recent season, he basically played about the same amount that he did the previous year. So this guy's played a lot of college football, 780 snaps, 94 tackles, 4.5 for loss, a pick, and 11 passes defensed. So notice how his ball production increases dramatically every season. 1 pass defense, 3 pass defensed, 6 passes defensed, 11 passes defensed. Fumble recovery and 2 forced fumbles. 16 missed tackles continues to be like a little bit of a black mark, but I guess that's somewhat excusable when you're making this many tackles. Again, wide variety of roles that he played for the New Mexico defense. You can see that here in the number of snaps he played. And his coverage metrics took a step in the right direction this year. 50 targets, 25 catches, 50%. He did give up some big plays, granted 328 yards is not great for a safety, but when he's playing a lot of slot corner as well, it's fine. 2 touchdowns, 76 QB rating allowed. And overall, his grades they continue to move in the right direction overall. Now, the pass rush rating doesn't really matter because he pass rushes less than once a game overall, but you can see that he's becoming a well-rounded, solid, effective player in pretty much all areas. And that gives us a really big sample size of stuff to look at when it comes to his college career. 41 games. He gave you 41 games, 2,648 snaps, 266 tackles, 9.5 for loss, 7 picks, 21 passes defensed, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles, 40 missed tackles, 6 pressures, 1,250 run defense snaps, 1,368 coverage snaps, and he played over 830 snaps as a box safety, 550 as a free safety, and 1,100 snaps as a slot corner. He did actually also play over 100 snaps as an outside corner, but most of those came in one game, so I guess somebody got hurt. Coverage numbers overall are pretty good, nothing over the top great, and I think these numbers become a little more excusable when you see how much he played in the slot. You're going to give stuff up when you're playing in the slot. If he was a safety giving up these numbers, that might be a little bit different. But it's a pretty full career for Jerrick Reed II. So there are a lot of numbers that we can look at here when trying to evaluate what kind of player we're getting into, for sure. It's a lot of tape. Unfortunately, I'm just going to say it, it's hard to find that tape because it's New Mexico. And a lot of the tape you find is not that good. I know firsthand because I tried to find some and I had limited success. So looking at these numbers, I do think we get a pretty decent idea of what this player is. He's somebody who does a bunch of different things for the New Mexico defense, playing basically 3 different roles. He's good in coverage. He gets involved in run defense. But as always, numbers are not going to be enough. We also have to dig a little bit deeper into the way this player plays, the kind of things that he brings to the table as a defensive back, and go from there in terms of trying to really understand what we are getting with our 6th round pick. All right, let me know what you guys think about all this. I will see you guys later today when we talk about Jerrick Reed II as a player, not just numbers, and I hope to see you guys then.